After graduating from Northeastern University, I did what any college grad did, and that was look for a job. So I turned to Craigslist. I was excited when I got a second interview for a direct marketing company. And I remember for that second interview, I was going to be with Mike in North Chelmsford, Massachusetts, servicing the Domino's Pizza client. So we drive to North Narnia, we park in front of a house, and Mike knocks on a seemingly random door, and a guy answers. And Mike says some words like, "Nothing crazy, free pizza, and $30 per coupon." And then he gives Mike $300. I was floored. I needed to know what kind of Harry Potter wizardry was happening. So sitting at McDonald's, Mike broke down what he was doing, and he drew a nice triangle, and he said more words like bottom of the triangle, top of the triangle, and own office. When he said the words own and office, my eyes got huge, because ever since I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than to have my own business, my own legacy with my own hands to help improve the world in some way. So I was excited. Told my parents about the opportunity that Mike laid out on a piece of paper. And I said, "Yeah, Dad, there's a triangle, and at the top of the triangle, I get my own office." And he said, "Son, you went to a great school in New Jersey. You have a degree from Northeastern University." He drew a pyramid. It wasn't a triangle. He wasn't happy. And my dad's a super accomplished guy. He went to Groton, growing up in Queens, went to Yale, Fordham for law school. He even can try cases at the Supreme Court. And all my parents wanted were for their four kids to do one better than them. And LeRoy III was not doing what was according to plan. So my parents wanted me to take a job that I could work my way up the corporate ladder, have some stability, and go that route. And they wanted me to be more like my uncles and aunts who are all successful lawyers, doctors, politicians. And Northeastern is not Yale, and door-to-door sales is not law school. And so LeRoy wanted something different that my parents wanted. I wanted my own business more than anything. So I said, I'm taking the job, but I'm gonna be great at door-to-door sales. Turns out, I was really, really bad at door-to-door sales. Months go by, and my parents are really disappointed in my decision. They tell me to get a job, get a salary, get a 401k. My grandmother, who's this 5-foot-tall woman, questionably, she runs the Watkins family like Don Corleone, was telling me that I needed to get a handle to my name, get my Juris Doctor, get my MBA, that I was dragging down the Watkins name. That I was being a bad example to my younger cousins. That I was not gonna be on the Watkins family Mount Rushmore. And all that really hurt. Just disappointing her and her not understanding my vision and my idea and my dreams. And I remember as a kid driving with my dad to soccer games, we would talk about, he would give me tips on how to score a hat trick. But in between those dad coaching tips, we would talk about Watkins & Watkins, the father and son law firm. And when I was in college, our conversations were full of hope, optimism. And after I took this job, our conversations were monotone, short, as if I was all of a sudden uninteresting. And I could hear the disappointment in my parents' voice every time I talked to them. Now, in addition to this family pressure for this job that I took, I was no closer to getting to the top of this fabled pyramid. And my fellow peddlers were passing me by. And I remember sitting in my car, I broke. I'm crying, snot coming down my nose. I'm poor. I have no one on my team. My electricity to my apartment is shut off. And I have a comically large eviction notice on the front door to my apartment. I can't ask my parents to bail me out again, so I have to quit. And then I remember what one of my daughter cell friends said to me. He said, Watkins, it's always darkest in the middle of the tunnel, and then you just gotta press on. So I was doing something that my family could understand. They're all very successful in their own right. And I wanted my own business. I wanted to build my own legacy. It wasn't a very defined path. I was going through a forest, and right now I was in the middle of this forest. And so I took my friend's advice and I pushed forward. And I got to the top of the pyramid. I got 15 people on my team. I was giving motivational door-to-door sales talks to offices around the country. But I never opened my own office. Instead, I started a company called My Bike. And I remember being so excited, telling my parents their son was a 24-year-old CEO, my life's dream realized. I was doing what I always wanted to do, but they were disappointed. They wanted me to go to corporate America and get a real job. My grandmother implored me to get a job with a salary for a stable company and get my success through a Fortune 500 business, or to be a prominent businessman or attorney. But I didn't want that. I wanted my own business. My parents, my grandparents just couldn't understand the untraditional route that I wanted to go. So I forged forward with My Bike, but as a personal compromise, I was like, let me get a job so I can at least afford life while doing My Bike. So I find this company that does sports camps and sports clinics called Viking Sports. I'm hired as a coach, and I quickly become the general manager. And with this guy named Zach, and me and Zach start working at Viking around the same time. And when Viking's ownership changed hands, me and Zach ran Viking Sports for the new owner, Dennis. And me and Zach did this together for years. And one day, I'm putting on my Viking uniform, and my wife, who was the Viking nanny, which is how we met, comes in the room and says, we're gonna become parents. That was the best news I could ever receive. It's what I wanted more than anything in the world, to be a dad. But reality set in, and everything crashed down at my feet because there's no way I could afford to raise a family on my meager Viking wages. So I panicked. Told my parents they're gonna become grandparents, and they said, son, this is the time where you need to focus on your family, get a job, get health insurance, and provide. My grandmother said for me to put my entrepreneurial pursuits in the rearview mirror and to stop being less selfish and to focus on Jen and my family. So I told Dennis, who owned Viking Sports, that I quit working at Viking. And he says, how about you buy it? I was not expecting that curveball answer. I was excited. And then I told my wife, and she's like, yeah, let's buy it. And the thing about buying a company, it's very, very hard when you have no money. And Dennis wanted a comically large amount of money for a down payment for Viking. So I talked to Zach, and I told Zach about the opportunity, and I said, hey, we should be business partners, and he agreed. And we also agreed to split the down payment. And of course, Zach had his money like that, so it's my turn to come up with my share of the money. My parents were a hard no for cash. On top of paying for my rent, they also had to deal with the psychological stress of their oldest son's career decisions. And they gave me $5,000 to buy some custom branded My Bikes from overseas that turned out to be junk. But my dad did connect me with the CFO at his company, and we were gonna use My Bike to qualify for an obscure loan to buy Viking Sports. And it was perfect. It was going according to plan until it didn't, and everything fell through. Now, like that time in my car, I was freaking out. I couldn't buy Viking. And I was gonna be a dad in a couple of months. I had severe neck pain. I couldn't breathe right. And my wife was genuinely concerned about my health. She said, go see a doctor, where I was diagnosed with stress. Now, I had no path forward to buying Viking, and I had to let Zach down with this information. We spent hours dreaming of this Viking sports utopia, and now I have to tell him that I'm out. But he says, Watkins, get to Brookline High School right now. We have to talk about this. And passionately, we discuss it. And he says, it has to be us. We have to do this together. We work so well together. And he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Watkins, if it's about the money, I'll pay for us. That's what he did. Today, Viking Sports is one of the largest private recreation and events companies in Massachusetts. We have about 100 people that work at the company, and we're expanding nationwide through franchising. My parents, who are my biggest doubters, are now my biggest supporters. My mom recently asked if she could have one of my Viking hoodies that she sees in my Instagram reels. And so now I'm the CEO that I always wanted to be. I am developing a legacy that I always wanted with my own two hands, positively impacting the world the best way that I can. And my grandmother, my lovely grandmother, I was talking to her the other day, and she said, oh, my entrepreneurial grandson. I talk about you to my friends all the time. You're so successful. I never doubted you for a second. Thank you.